Hey guys, this is little sister Chris, and for those of you all who are new to the podcast, Surviving Sibling Loss, the Forgotten Mourners podcast, I am the creator of this podcast. And I started podcasting back in 2019 prior to the pandemic, and I'm so glad that I did because podcasting really helped during the pandemic to connect with so many different surviving siblings. And I had another podcast before the surviving sibling loss one I had, because I am a licensed mental health professional, and the one I had before was hashtag Get Naked Therapist. And I was working on that one a bit more for a couple of years, and then realized I needed to retire it, and I could not focus on two podcasts and work and run an LLC. I couldn't do it all. So I decided last year to retire Get Naked Therapist and decided to just concentrate on Surviving Sibling Loss, the Forgotten Mourners podcast. So, and I'm glad I did, because that's where my passion lies. I am a grief-informed therapist who is a surviving sibling, a little sister. And I've been on this journey since 1997. And to give you the history of me and my brother was 3 years older than me, and he was a big ball of energy. I mean, he never stopped going. He had a lot of friends, and our house was like the fun house. You come to our house and you have a whole bunch of boys at the house, because they were all my brother's friends at both neighborhoods. Where we grew up, my first 11 years was in one part of town, and then my parents moved to a different part of town. But every house we were in, there was a lot of kids, outside, inside, whatever. My brother kept with a lot of people, and it wasn't just one set of people. It would be a bunch of people, like white people, black people, old people, young people. He babysat, loved babies. He was just the most rambunctious, rough, aggressive, but yet the kindest kid. Got into everything. And he was just, we were opposite. I was quiet at the time when I was growing up. Very quiet, very shy. Everybody in the house was loud. I don't believe I was as loud as everybody else, but you would have to ask one of my parents for verification. But people who have known me all of my life know how quiet I used to be, and not so much anymore. But my brother was like my second parent. He raised me, basically. And not to say that my parents were not there. That's not what I'm saying. They were always there, both my mom and my dad, in the home. But my brother taught me about life. Taught me how to fight. Taught me how to be slick, because he was rough. He did not give me no breaks. There was no room in my life to be dainty. There was absolutely no room between my dad and my brother. There was no room to be dainty, because my brother was just rough. And I remember wanting to be like the boys. I remember wanting to be a boy at one point, until I start liking boys, and then that was a wrap. So I remember the way I dressed was more masculine. We used to call it tomboy. I don't call it tomboy anymore, but I used to be more of a masculine type. And when I talk about I ran hard. We used to have more of a yard where I grew up, and I ran hard with my brother. We'd be playing kickball. We would play baseball in the backyard. We would dirt bike. we would barefoot, we'll run through our parents' garden, and we never got in trouble for this, but I'm pretty sure we tore up a few stalks of corn back then. I remember hearing them snap when we would be racing. I just have injuries to tell the stories of falling and running into stuff and having bike accidents and all of those things. I had a great childhood with my brother, because there was no fear. There was absolutely no fear when it came to my brother. If he thought it, we was going to try it. And my mom has a very funny story that it's funny now, but back then it wasn't funny because we could have both lost our lives then. But Mom, I'll tell you a story. Mom, and I remember this too. We had a little itty bitty car, and my mom used to take us to drive go-karts, okay? So we decided to take a car that was parked on the side of our house, in the side yard of our house. It was a Dodge Omni. So if you can remember, back in the 80s, there was a car called a Dodge Omni. And it was very small. And maybe I could put a picture up. But it was a very small car. My brother and I decided that we were going to take the car and roll it into the woods. My brother had made a dirt bike road for us to ride our bikes on, and the family or the neighborhood kids to ride their bikes on. And it was so fun. And it'd be like our own little interstate system. It would be our own little interchange. It would be everything, stoplights, speed bumps, everything in the dirt. Okay. Merges, all of that. It was so fun. Okay. So we decided we're going to take this car into the woods so we can drive it on our little road system built in the back. We got to the hill, and I'm gonna tell you, my brother gave me instructions. Okay. He gave me instructions on what to do. I sat in the driver's seat of this car. Couldn't even reach the pedals. I don't remember reaching the pedals. I was little. I know I probably was maybe 5, 6 years old. My mom would probably say I was younger than that. But my brother was in the back of the car. He told me to put the car in mutual. He told me to steer the car as he pushed it down the side of in the grass, down the side yard of our house, into the backyard. And we had to go up a hill, a little slight hill, to get to our little road system. And he said, if you feel like the car is about to roll back, throw on the emergency brake and put your foot on the brake. I was ready to. I knew what my duties were. I was to steer and then make sure the car doesn't roll back on him. Okay? And if it's rolling, or I felt like it was rolling, or I felt like he was not in control, I was going to throw that brake on and put my foot on the brake once I reached it. So we almost got there. We get to the hill, and the car is going slightly to the hill. Next thing you know, I look over and my mama is right there. She said she couldn't even holler. That's how scared it was. It was to the point like she had to immediately, when she saw us, we were already to the hill. That wasn't none but the Lord. So when she saw us, she said she didn't holler because, number one, she was scared that she was going to scare us and it was going to be a situation. So I guess she ran out there, and all I remember was she was right there. And it scared the mess out of me. And then I thought, well, we was almost there. As a kid, we was almost there. I don't remember getting in trouble. I feel like my mom said that we got in trouble, but I don't remember us getting in trouble for it. I might have just blacked out. I don't know. But I don't remember getting in trouble. I just remember that whole situation where there was a will, there's a way. And I still I still like that today. Ask my parents. We're still, my brother is deceased, but I have that in me still today. Like, I still sometimes have fear. Well, not sometimes, there's fear, but it's like fear and do it anyway. And I'm blessed with that. And again, that's the reason why my brother was so pivotal in my life, because he had no fear. Now they diagnosed him as ADHD back in the day, in elementary school back in the day, and that's a whole nother topic. But that's who I grew up around, and he didn't meet a single stranger. But to go into the story of fast forward into me being a freshman in high school, 14 years old, my brother being a senior in high school that year, and we were so excited to be able to go to school together again, because every year we got to go to school together for 1 year. Elementary school, I was in kindergarten, he was in 3rd grade. And then middle school, I was in 5th grade, he was in 8th grade. And then high school, I was in 9th grade and he was in 12th grade. And I always had fun going that 1 year with my brother. So our year comes up, and my brother is acting weird. He's acting a bit funny. And we really start to notice some things about his changes. And the changes being that he had some swelling right behind his ear, right here in the nape. And, at the time, we didn't know what that was. And then when I was in school, he would just show up to my class. I didn't know how he knew my schedule. He would just show up. I had a computer class. I had 2 computer classes, and he would just pop up in my class. I'll look up and my brother was standing right there. And he would be like, "Hey, I skipped class today," or "I skipped something to go to sleep today." And he's like, "You gonna tell mom and daddy?" I'm like, "For what?" Okay. Why are you here? Why are you in my class? And where are you supposed to be at? And then I didn't really think about him sleeping and the reason why he would tell me that. I had no clue. And we realized that his energy level was going down. And for somebody who's always in something, doing something, my mom took him to the ER one Friday night, and the ER doctor said that he had some fluid on his lungs, and if he doesn't feel better, just take him to his PCP. Took him to the PCP, got a physical, and that's before we really were concentrated on getting physicals every year. Before then, after infancy and toddler and all your shots and stuff are due, I don't remember us going to the doctor once a year to get a physical. So went to the PCP and got a physical. Something came out in his blood system, and they went back to the doctor for my dad and my brother went back to the doctor telling him that his white blood cells were extremely high. Did not know what that meant. But what did occur was my brother was referred over to an oncologist. And I was not at this appointment. And I knew my brother had a doctor's appointment that day. But I was still in school when he had this appointment. And I remember this like it's yesterday, and I'm having a visceral, reaction to remembering. because something that my therapist has told me in the past was, I don't connect to my stories. And she told me that when I tell my story, I just tell it as if I'm narrating somebody else's story. And that captured me because I'm a therapist, and apparently I go into therapy mode when I'm talking about my story. So I've been working on that. And I was locked out of the house because I couldn't find my key. And I'm so glad that I was locked out of the house, because my dad called while I was locked out, and I was over at my neighbor's house, because if ever we were locked out of the house or couldn't find our key, which was often, we would go down to my neighbor's home, because she and her husband were retired and they would look after us. We have really good neighbors. And if you're a follower of the podcast, the audio podcast, you would know this is the neighbor that recently passed in December or November. And she was good 90 years old, and I would never forget her. But I was at her house. Her husband was living at the time, and I ended up coming home because I guess my dad called. He knew exactly where I was. Or I went outside. I can't remember how I knew they were back home, but I came back home, and I don't know where my dad was, but I remember walking in the house, and I remember just the mood in the house was completely different, and I could feel like something just wasn't right. And I walked into the front of the house to see my brother standing at the window. And he said, "Crystal, I'm going to die." And I said, "What?" And he said, I have leukemia. I didn't know what that meant. And I was scared to ask him what it meant, because I didn't want, he was in this look out the window mode, and I'm 14, he's 17 at the time. I had no clue what it meant. I just remember it as if I'm looking out the window right now, and I can see him. Yeah, he's like, "I'm going to die." It was very matter of fact. And back then, there was no internet, so I couldn't look it up. So we had encyclopedia. And I went to go look it up. And I was like, "Okay, GP, which kind do you have?" Because in the encyclopedia, it had 2 types. And I was like, "Do you have acute or do you have chronic?" And he said, "I have acute." And in the encyclopedia, it said acute lymphoblastic leukemia is aggressive. It's an aggressive form of leukemia. And in the encyclopedia at the time, and this was 1997, actually, he was diagnosed September 13th, 1996. And I will never forget that date, because it was the same date that Tupac, my brother's favorite, was shot and subsequently died. So it was just a lot going on back in them days back then. And Tupac was his favorite, but to go back, the acute cancer, leukemia, had something. I just remember 7 months. That's what I remember. Was reading 7 months, and I remember just the pit of my stomach. Like how life just changes in an instant. My mom was not home yet. She was at work. And I don't even remember how it was told to her. I don't even remember the rest of that day. I just remember our conversation and me finding out that this seemed terminal. But being a family of faith, you just didn't think it was possible. And I remembered a kid passing in elementary school from cancer. I remembered this, and I started thinking about him, and his name was Tristan, and his sister's name was Tiffany. And if you're out there, and I've not said your name I'm 40. I haven't said your name in like 38 years. And I know I probably was in 3rd grade. So what? I haven't said your name in 30 years. But I remember him, and I started thinking about him when I found out about my brother's diagnosis. And that was in September. And we watched the highs and the lows, the very low lows of cancer, take a 17-year-old down. And he was in remission very quickly. By, I want to say, winter, he was in remission. He was in remission by the winter time, and we were so excited. He looked healthier, even though he had gained weight because he was on steroids. He had gone through aggressive chemo. He had gone through radiation. And I look back on it, I don't even know how my parents even dealt with that. So much. Looking back on 26 years of, as a grown person, the stuff that you didn't understand, and the channels of a heart. And I don't have any children, but I couldn't imagine watching it, because it was hard as a sister to watch that. Around the first of the year, around the first of the year, 1997, things just turned. And we were in Alabama at my dad's, at twins' house, at my dad's brother, in my auntie's house. It was New Year's. My dad, myself, and my brother were in Montgomery. My brother just wasn't feeling good. And we were about to go into the new year of 1997, and my brother just was not feeling well, and to find out that his blood sugar had shot up, and it was in the wee hours of the night. I want to say it was past midnight. My dad got his stuff. We got our stuff. And we hiked it back up 4 hours to Nashville to get him to the hospital. I mean, I think it took my dad 3 hours to get there. I'm pretty sure he was doing 100 plus to get back to Nashville to get my brother to the hospital. And his blood sugar was just high because of steroids, and it caused him to be a diabetic. And then we found out that the cancer had came back. He was admitted this time going to Vanderbilt instead of going to Summit, which was the local hospital, but going to Vanderbilt before they had a Vanderbilt Children's Hospital. And I think he might have he was admitted and he may have been home maybe a couple weeks and then came back and went back sometime in February to the hospital. In February, March, April, he was gone in April. He celebrated his 18th birthday on March 18th in the hospital. His golden birthday. And I remember spring break of that year and thinking to myself, I can't wait to spend this time with my brother because you have to go back and forth. My parents lived about 25 minutes away from the hospital. It wasn't like it was down the street. So there's times where, you gotta get off the bus. Nobody's at home. You have friends and family friends from church and family from church and neighbors that pick me up and take me to the hospital so I can meet my parents there. And then them going to work from the hospital and I remember just enjoying the fact that for spring break I could spend time with my brother without having to keep going back and forth and be by myself at the house and all of that. I'm giving myself a little headache. But I did just that for spring break. I sat in the chair next to his bed. And I didn't want to go to sleep ever. I didn't want to go to sleep. I just remember thinking to myself, I'm not going to sleep. I'm going to stay up as long as I can. So he won't feel like he's alone. When he's up at night, and if he's in pain, I wanted to be awake so that if he woke up, that he would have somebody to talk to or tell me if he's in pain. And I remember I just did not want to go to sleep. And I don't remember ever really fully sleeping a full week of spring break. But as a 14-year-old to our brother, I just wanted to have every moment with him I could. I would just watch him. The veins in his forehead or on the side of his head, his breathing patterns, everything. I would just watch it. And if he woke up to say something, I wanted to be able to respond to him. And that's what I did. We celebrated his birthday, his 18th birthday. And not long after that, he was in ICU. And never heard his voice again because he needed assistance with breathing. And they had him comatose. And April 10th, 1997, he was gone. He died that morning. And we were not there at the hospital when he died. We were on our way. And my auntie was there with us, and my uncle was there. They're both deceased now. And I remember thinking, my whole world felt like it was in it. My whole world felt like it had shifted. And I was thinking, you left me by myself. What do I do? What do I do? How do you be by yourself? And the pain in my chest just would not go away for a while. And I didn't emote like I'm emoting now. I felt like I couldn't. I felt so bad for my parents. And then trying to make sense of it in my mind as a 14-year-old. It was like being shell-shocked. Like I'm hurt, but I can't